of food sovereignty. Also, in the past decades, she has worked with various organizations in the Asia-Pacific region against globalization, fighting against an inequitable system spread through these neoliberal policies that is which being advocated by the IMF and being pushed against the people of Pakistan. So to tackle the political impact of the debt crisis in Pakistan, let us all welcome Azra Talal Saeed. Azra, please.
Thank you very much, Noel. Thank you for the introduction. Bali had presented mostly the economic context of what is happening in the country after the IMF conditionalities. And I think it's not only economic, the impacts are also very intensely political, which we face in the country. So I will focus more on the political side of what is happening. Just to kind of give a very brief background, although my previous speaker has said some of this, from 1958 to date, Pakistan has had 23 agreements with the IMF, and many of them had been called off due to poor implementation. However, even in spite of that, the relationship continues. A critique is that the government signs these IMF agreements are politically driven, and the approach the IMF for resolving a temporary crisis such as the balance of payments and otherwise increasing the budget deficit. Of course, this is very clear from the standby agreement that the government signed last year. So the context of the according to the IMF, the context of these agreements should be to carry out reforms for future economic independence and stability. But that does not really happen. As I just said, it's really for resolving a temporary crisis in the country. So then the question is, why does the IMF keep coming back and signing these agreements with governments that have a proven record of, number one, not fulfilling the conditionalities that have been demanded by the IMF, and secondly, why does the IMF give money to countries that are highly undemocratic as well as are responsible for extreme human rights violations? Because the Western imperialism constantly uses this stick on our countries that we are not democratic, we do not respect human rights, and so if that is the case, then why do they come back and keep on giving us such huge monetary benefits, so-called? So looking at the IMF dealing with Pakistan, one can say that the dealings of IMF with our governments in the past and present are based on mutually beneficial collaboration of the each sectors of Pakistan and that of the Western imperialist countries who are giving these loans to us. So when I make this a very political statement, what do I have in terms of proving what I'm saying? So I will just take the case of the last year, the 2023 standby agreement that the government of Pakistan has gone into with IMF, and just give you some of what has happened in the country. So the IMF standby agreement was signed on June 30th. And then in August, the government of Pakistan, which was being run by Shehbaz Sharif, the Noon League government, Noon League is one political party in the country, and they dissolved the government on August 9 because they wanted a caretaker government to come in, who would now be responsible for holding the elections. However, they dissolved the government on August 9, but on August 5, just 4-5 days before that, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested who is part of the PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party. So there are basically these two parties, the Noon League and the PTI, who are at loggerheads with each other trying to get power in the country. So just before dissolving the government on August 9, on August 5th, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was arrested on charges of corrupt practices. On August 8th, the Election Commission of Pakistan made a ruling to disqualify Imran Khan from seeking office for a duration of 5 years. So I am not trying to say who's right or wrong. The issue is that there was this power politics happening, and it was very obvious to everybody that all of this was on political grounds, and this was just like a couple of months after the IMF deal had been signed. So then, on one hand, a popular leader from the opposition party was pushed out of the way from competing in the upcoming elections, and at the same time, laws were enacted which would allow Noon League's president, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, to come back into government, who had been put into jail by Imran Khan, who also had levied corruption charges on Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And then Nawaz Sharif had left the country on the basis of poor health. And so we could see this tussle of power happening. From July 1st to August 7th, in a matter of 38 days, the outgoing government passed 108 bills in the parliament. And I will only critique some of the laws that were passed in such a big hurry. So our analysis and everybody's analysis was actually that these laws were passed very quickly by a so-called democratic government, so that they could rubber stamp it, saying that these laws were not passed by a caretaker government or a military government. These were passed by a democratically appointed government. And of course, this is to appease, it's an eyewash to appease the IMF and the other so-called Western democracies of the democratic processes that are happening in our country. Some of the bills that were passed, I will just go through some of them. Of course, I cannot discuss 108. I do not have the capacity to discuss the 108. But there were some very critical laws that were passed that were for limiting freedom of criticism on a very pertinent institution of the country, which is the Pakistan Army. So two acts were passed: the Pakistani Army Act of 2023, and then also the Official Secrets Act of 1923. Amendments were made to that. These bills were aimed at criminalizing individuals who reveal information detrimental to the security and interest of Pakistan or its armed forces. The second bill of the Official Secrets Act was given, which said that intelligence agencies could at any time conduct raids and detain civilians without a warrant of interest. Even if they had a suspicion of legal breaches, they could come and arrest and take up civilians or anybody whom they thought was detrimental to the security and interest of the country or the armed forces. So these bills actually can be used any which way. We know that. If there is a resistance fighter, if somebody is standing up fighting against privatization, if somebody is saying, why are you giving our land to a country which is not to individuals who are not Pakistani nationals, they could be arrested, saying that what you're saying, the kind of unrest you're creating, is not in the interest of the country. So these were really tools to ensure that nobody could actually now start challenging the new laws that were coming into practice. Another law was also the amendment bill to the criminal laws bill, which allowed the term for putting a person into jail was extended by 10 years. And that was especially with respect to blasphemy. We have laws which say that protect the honor of the Prophet Muhammad, and if anybody says anything against the Prophet, which nobody does, it's just a way of then putting a blame on civilians, saying that they have insulted the Prophet. And so it is a tool for harassing, especially the minority groups in the country. Then there are many other laws. There was the Pakistan, but I would just say that the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority Act, the PEMRA Act, which the government tried to impose, but there was so much high resistance from the media sectors that they were forced to withdraw that bill. So it just showed us, I just mentioned this particularly to show that when there is resistance, the government also has to kind of back off, which is very, very critical for us people, for organizations and mass movements like us to come and talk about this. Then there was the e-safety bill, which was 2023, and a huge number of other bills whose basic context was to ensure that media would not have the kind of space to come out and report anything and everything that they wanted to say. People could be, especially the media, was basically silenced through many of these laws, and that was the context. So the last point I really want to raise is on the another political impact. On the very last stage that the government was going, they created a new facility which was called the SIFC, which is the Special Investment Facilitation Council. This is a one-window facilitation center for exporting to outside countries. What they said was that this SIFC was equally being run by the Pakistan Army as well as the civilian government. Now, the SIFC is very critical to understand in the context of this country. We believe that, in essence, the formation of SIFC and the powers that the army has been given is basically a soft coup in the country. Why do we say that? Because Shehbaz Sharif, on the day he was leaving, said that foreign countries have said that the country has to be politically stable. So the connotation was that the political stability of a country, of Pakistan particularly, comes with army's leadership. Now that is very, very undemocratic, and we really do not believe that is a correct representation of democracy. For the loans, for the IMF loans, China gave 2.4 billion in loans to Pakistan for 2 years. That were to be now, it was a bailover, I don't know what it is called. So it was a delayed response. Now Pakistan has to take more time to repay those loans. At the same time, Saudi Arab and UAE also gave quite a bit of loans. Saudi Arab gave $2 billion and UAE gave $1 billion. And the SIFC, the connection that I'm trying to make is that the Special Investment Facilitation Council has been set up to export from Pakistan to these countries on particular needs. So the loans which they gave us, the kind of money they gave us to ensure that we got the loans from IMF, were actually in self-interest of these countries. Now these countries are on different political blocks. You know, we are now in a phase of re-emerging political blocks of imperialist powers being run by China and the United States. We know that Saudi Arabia is in one block, and China is, of course, the head of the other block. And now that these two countries are investing in the country, it's very possible that with time we will be put in a very difficult position of how do we deal with the opposing political interests of these foreign governments. So I just wanted to just repeat myself, and that's my last comment, is that that's why we say that the elite of our country actually are hand in hand with the IMF. They happily take the loans, and the IMF and other institutions happily give the loans because it is in the best interest of the two elite groups, and it is extremely not in the interest of the people of the country. And that's why, in the end, we have a country which is economically unstable, which is politically unstable. There is no way that we can build national sovereignty. There is no way that we can build self-reliance. All of those basic foundations of genuine democracy are totally broken, are totally smashed by the IMF loans and the conditionalities they put on us. And with that, I will finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Azra, for that explanation on the current political situation now in Pakistan. They know that things will get really worse, and they are preparing. They don't want anyone to speak out against these IMF policies, as well as how the big countries, the imperial powers, are trying to rip open Pakistan. So now let's invite our first reactor. He is an internationally acclaimed activist and human rights defender from Sri Lanka, another country from South Asia, just like Pakistan, whose work centers on the fisherfolk community and climate justice. He is the convener of the National Fisheries Solidarity Movement, or NAFSO, of Sri Lanka, and the General Secretary of the World Forum of Fisher People, or the WFFP. To give inputs and perspectives on the Sri Lanka debt crisis, we are very lucky to have here Herman Kumara. Herman, I would like to give you the floor, and please discuss to us the situation now of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity and inviting for this important meeting. While listening to Asa and Wali, I felt that they are speaking about Sri Lanka because there is no much difference between Sri Lanka and Pakistan. The economic, political situations more or less same. Only in Sri Lanka, we around 17 times we have gone to the IMF and for the bailout packages, but most of the time we haven't concluded or logically end the this bailout conditionalities and the demands from them. However, maybe most of you know that the Sri Lanka is one of the countries in South Asia which at early stages, that was in 1978, almost 40 years ago, we adopted these neoliberal economic policies, and we opened our markets, we opened our resources, we opened our labor to the world, and now we are suffering with the serious damages to the ecology, ecosystems, to our labor, our people's life and livelihoods very badly. You know, the current situation here was is really disturbing. Maybe in Sri Lanka, because of the conditionalities of IMF, we had to suffer a lot. For example, right now, because of the increase, the electricity bill, more than 1.1 million people, that's out of 22 million, 1.1 million people are totally cut off the electricity network because people cannot pay back the electricity bills. And around 1 million people, they cut off their water. And that's really a serious situation, especially in the urban areas, Colombo city. So people cannot afford. You know, for example, one of the clear example, yesterday, 1 kilogram of carrot, the vegetable, the price is around $7 per kilogram. We have never experienced this type of difficulty in our lifetime. And also, during the past 50 or 75 years of of independence, so-called independence, we suffered. This is the first time we suffered this much of economic crisis, and we never heard about the bankruptcy. So this is the time that we felt the bankruptcy in Sri Lanka. So last year, April 22, the government declared Sri Lanka as a bankrupt country, and we need to go to the IMF. From then, because of scarcity of fuel, scarcity of fertilizer, scarcity of medicine, and the price has gone up, and all the materials, the prices have gone up. So people were not afford to buy them, and they were a real and serious situation. It affected fisher people, it affected farmers, it affected garment industry, and the whole country, whole economy was becoming bad to us. So with this situation, we think we can see there is no difference between the country like Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So the irony is that the government, which was people last year, the Sri Lankan people evicted the elected executive president from his post, and the newly appointed president with parliament majority. So now he is very strongly and very accelerated manner going towards the IMF bailout package. In that, now he is in Davos and he is ready to, he is now selling out all the resources. The irony is, now at current situation, people are getting food, people are getting fuel, people are getting electricity in higher prices, but since it is, people think that, okay, now he is delivering certain things for us, so we need to wait and see he will do something. And taking advantage of that, he is trying to sell whatever the possible resources, water bodies, land, forests, sand, and anything and everything that could be sold out. So in that context, now people think, okay, now we need to eat something, we can move smoothly without having any difficulty, we have fuel, we have food, and we can live without harm. Because in that, people think, okay, because of his the government policies, it's better that we will keep silence and allow him to do whatever the things that he can do, sell out or bail out, whatever the things that he can do to overcome the current situation. And when some people coming out from this situation, they are fighting against this one. Now, it's similar situation like Pakistan. More than 60 laws, the bills are being now proposed in the parliament to pass. Some of them are totally draconian laws. Something like, as Asa said, like one particular bill called online safety bill. So in that, so the government cannot control the criticism coming from the civil society and the people against the government policies, which they want to totally crush down, and using online safety bill, they are trying to shut down or shut the mouth of the people. And second thing, when civil society coming up, they are trying to use some of the acts called Civil Society Regulatory Act, and they want to use it as squeeze the space of the civil society interventions, civil society activism, and so on. At the same time, government now proposing a new act called Anti-Terrorism Act. We had one act called Prevention of Terrorism Act, which clearly shows if you take arms, it's called terrorism. But now, in the definition of terrorism, now it's called if any person or any organization taking any stand against the government policies, the government development activities, so that is also will be claimed as a terrorism. So in that context, you can understand when people are trying to overcome this type of resource grabbing and also ocean grabbing and so on, government can say, okay, this is terrorism and you will be put in jail for a long period of time. So this is the operation that we are going to face very soon. And also the civil society cannot work as we were practicing in the past with this new act. And these are three clear acts that I am talking about. But there are 60 these type of acts are coming up. So in that context, we don't have any difference between Pakistan and Sri Lanka in the economic, social, and political situation. I don't know Pakistan people how they are responding, but Sri Lankan people, civil society, the trade unions are trying to do something, but majority people, those who came out to evict the president through the struggle, are now silent. They are just watching the fun. So this is the irony that we are facing in Sri Lanka right now. So this is the thing that we need to overcome. On top, we are divided very badly based on the religious and ethnic backgrounds, the identities. So there are so many ways government is trying to divide people through these measures. So we are trying to unite people, but government and media, mostly some of the media, is trying to divide us very badly. So this is the situation that we are in Sri Lanka right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherman. And indeed, the situation are very similar, both in Pakistan and in Sri Lanka. Very difficult for the working people. Everything is expensive, so it's really difficult. And but just like Sri Lanka, Pakistan is also fighting. The people of Pakistan, the working people, are standing up against this exploitation and oppression being done by IMF and other imperial powers. So let's now go to our next reactor. He's currently the policy head of Ibon International, one of the co-organizers of the 2023 Reclaim Our Future Conference against the neoliberal and monopoly capitalist dictates of the IMF and the World Bank. To tackle the general conditionalities of IMF, World Bank Group, and how these are all being used against the people of the Global South, I would like to call on Rodolfo Lahoy. Rodolfo, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, whichever. Thanks to the International League of People's Struggle for inviting Ibon International to share some reflections, reactions to this very important webinar for this Global Month of Solidarity for Pakistan. And I've been given the hard task of following the prior speakers who are all very much in touch with people's struggles on the ground. I just hope to reflect on some key insights we heard today with the work that we do at Ibon International against IMF and the World Bank. Perhaps in the tradition of my generation of doing listicles or list articles, I want to present some following reflections, which I call like 5 reflections on why we should resist the IMF in particular in this instance, in Pakistan and beyond. My first reflection is this. Number 1, the term debt trap to me actually applies to what the IMF does. Listening here reminded me that this year, 2024, marks 50 years since one academic named Cheryl Payer released in 1974 a book called The Debt Trap, IMF and the Third World. So this is a reminder to me that before the term debt trap was used against certain lending countries, it was really a charge directed against the IMF. And we know already that many countries are already undergoing risks or are actually undergoing debt crises. We also heard, here the general story of this debt trap, decades of harmful neoliberal policies and monopoly capitalist dictates and plunder, destroying economic prospects, hollowing out the domestic production base of agriculture and industry, orienting these for export. And then a country in crisis becomes dependent on external financing such as IMF loans, and institutions like the IMF will loan with conditionalities to these countries, and that debtor country will implement conditionalities with the complicity of local elites, as some of you have indicated, such as austerity measures, to be able to supposedly increase revenues to pay back these loans. And we see countries sometimes spending more on debts than healthcare, spending more on debts than people's needs. And that overall set of reforms will further ruin the economic prospects of people in the country and will lead to more loans in a vicious cycle. So we saw this in how the colleagues and the comrades here reflected about at least, if I heard it correctly, at least 23 loan programs with the IMF and Pakistan from 1958 to the present. So like undergoing the same thing despite consistently bad results. There's a name for this, right? And it's called being a country under monopoly capitalistic days. So that's my first reflection. My second reflection is that actually, from the people's side, so-called IMF bailouts are a misnomer. It's not really a bailout. To be bailed out means to be free from a difficult situation. But the IMF does not bail out the people, but actually chain us, bind us, and burden us through conditionalities. Only the lenders, the creditors, are effectively bailed out, with money being extracted by private lenders, the IMF, etc. And I was also reminded of this one study which showed that from 1984 to 2014, they were able to track, I think, around more than 58,000 conditionalities, IMF conditionalities. And 87% of these 58,000 conditionalities actually revolved around debt actions. For instance, quick means to quickly pay overdue foreign debts, financial sector liberalization, revenue and tax reforms, and trade investment and exchange reforms. So that's 87%, and the remaining percent of policy adjustments are about privatization, wage limits, and others really. So this shows that debt and conditionalities are very much intertwined globally. And is part of this system of extracting wealth from our countries. At the other hand, we know that, for instance, in 2023, 85% of the world live under austerity measures, according to the End Austerity Campaign. And our colleagues already showed the different concrete conditions in Pakistan on how these conditionalities look like, from, like Wally mentioned, taxes, hikes on services like electricity, driving inflation, etc. So that's my second reflection. My third reflection is how really foreign and external debt has been part of exploitative economic relationships under monopoly capitalism, in a way that debt is already about an unequal relationship between the lender and the debtor. Add to this the structural role of the IMF and the World Bank in this monopoly capitalist system as an institution that is used to facilitate the extraction of super profits, be it in the form of interest payments, principal payments in debt, or facilitating the land dispossession and elite control of the means of production such as land. Conditionalities are only part of these neo-colonial debates. And we can also already by now quantify these exploitative relationships. One study by academics found that 162 trillion US dollars was drained from the global south from the 1960s to 2017 only through two ways, keeping wages low and cheapening the prices of exports. With the debt and export link already explained by Wally earlier. And this kind of drain has increased during the neoliberal decades of IMF, World Bank structural adjustment. For South Asia, in that figure of 152 trillion, 4.6 trillion worth of resources were stolen from South Asia alone, and 11.2 trillion from Southeast Asia. My fourth reflection is how really the IMF and perhaps the World Bank too likes to talk about crisis response. They are supposed to be responding to crises, but they do not talk about, to play on that term, crisis response, their own responsibility for crises. The stakes are high for these institutions now. Neoliberalism has been exposed by the pandemic. We people are ever feeling that our troubles are because of the current system we are being forced under. We also know that the dominance of the former unipolar hegemon in the world, the United States, is militarily and economically in decline. And add to that, the growing dynamics of people's resistance from Pakistan to Sri Lanka to the Philippines, and the other side of repression. So in this big context, the IMF and the World Bank as US-led institutions are very much interested to portray themselves as bearers of solutions. So we should be very much concerned when we hear outside this call, when we read IMF World Bank documents, when they start talking about climate, when they start talking about sustainability, when they start talking about gender, because their policies, programs, and loans have actually done the opposite of what their policy discourse has claimed to be doing. For example, this system supported by the IMF and the World Bank has been driving the climate crisis, including the extreme weather events that Pakistan experienced in 2022 with all the flooding. It's because of this system supported by these IFIs. And in fact, these IFIs do not have the solutions. They are part of the problem. The system that they reinforce is the problem. And concerningly, the overall situation is one of impunity. The IMF and the World Bank erase their own history of being part of the system of exploitation and oppression, and present themselves as bearers of solutions. So I think the task of exposing, opposing, and holding accountable the IMF and the World Bank includes telling the real history, like this webinar does, telling the real struggles, and it is part of struggling against a world economic system that has only produced immense wealth for a few, while widespread misery for the people. And lastly, my fifth reflection reads as follows. Tell me the history of Pakistan, and I'll tell you why social movements should stop the IMF and the World Bank. Because we heard from this webinar that decades of conditionalities, both bearing economic and political impacts on people, show that IFI-dictated reforms worsen economic and political crisis for the people. And this year, 2024, will mark 80 years since the Bretton Woods Conference that established these institutions. I think we need to face this 80-year anniversary of the Bretton Woods Conference with the rejection of these dictates, with the rejection of chronic indebtedness, reject the support of these institutions for repression, and rejecting neo-colonial bondage. So the IMF should be held accountable for perpetuating the current dominant system. And this is part of the reason why we at Ibon International co-organized the Reclaim Our Future Conference in Marrakech.
This has been forwarded to us by our tech team. Thank you again for our tech team. The first question is, we are aware of the problem in Pakistan. Maybe this would be best responded by Wali and Azra. How can we help? What can we do to support the Pakistani people, the working people of Pakistan in this dire situation right now? So, Wali, Azra.
Thank you, Noel. I think it's, that's why this webinar has been series of action and event designed by IPS so that how question can be dealt with. I think as Harman already mentioned that similar situation is happening in Sri Lanka, and as you also mentioned, not just in Sri Lanka, but in many of the third world countries. If somehow we can build a collective movement to support each other, civil society and grassroots movement, to counter this kind of a monster, the kind of atrocities by our elite government imposed to us, would be great if you can have a regional or global campaign on the bailout plan, on the IMF conditionalities, overall the neoliberal paradigm. Unless or until we have this kind of a global campaign in nature, the very atrocities in the respective countries and the rules and regulation and policies which Herman also mentioned, similar policies and rules being implemented in Pakistan. Azra also mentioned few of them, how the rights-based activists, environmental defender have been targeted by our respective government. It's become very difficult to have a radical movement in our countries. So it will be a very good opportunity if ILPS and many other like-minded grassroots organization or movement come together and create a global or regional voice and build a strong campaign which support each other, not just one specific country as a whole, would be feasible and I think best option in this kind of scenario. Thank you, Binoy.
Thank you, Ali. So we need to do a global campaign. We need to work together. All of the global south work together and fight IMF World Bank. Here's another question. Again, for Wali or Azra. So this is very recent. Just yesterday, Iran hit Pakistan with missiles, targeting, according to Iran, the militant group Jaish al-Adil. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This situation, this attack on this militant group by Iran inside of Pakistan, how will this tension in the Middle East affect Pakistan in general, specifically the economy or the politics of Pakistan?
I think Azra might respond to that in a better manner, because we have been talking and she mentioned that she heard this news before than me. So I will give to Azra to respond on that.
Thank you, Azra. Thank you, Ali.
This is a very, very dangerous escalation that has happened. And this is a direct result of the kind of policies that the government of Pakistan has been pursuing, not having sovereign status over its own boundaries and allowing so many different groups to work within the country. And that is the key of a neo-colonial country, how it is being used constantly. And this issue has arisen out of the Afghan war, which was held in the country how many years ago? This was in 1980. So 40 years before, the Americans deliberately created a jihadi group. Again, these groups are being kept into our land to create this kind of attention, because Iran and Pakistan have a very long border amongst us. And there has been constant conversation between Iran and Pakistan to start having a very, very thriving trade relationship with Iran. So this is one way of creating dissent and anger against these countries. I don't know if these groups are there, but I trust that Iran knew what they were doing. Iran has been highly anti-imperialistic in its policies for many years, forever, since the 70s, and the Americans have been trying to do everything to dislodge the Iranian government. I know that Iran gets a lot of flack for whatever policies it has, but that is its internal issue. The Americans or the imperialists have no right to try to weaken or overthrow the government of Iran, which has been their constant policy. So yes, it has a very strong implication for us. But I will just tell you this, that just yesterday, on the 16th of January, Pakistani naval fleets and the Iranian naval fleets were in a joint exercise yesterday. And so, I hope that sanity will prevail, and the government of Pakistan and government of Iran can come to some kind of a non-militaristic, cooperative mechanism of overcoming these forces which are inflicted on us by the Americans very clearly. Very long history we have of the Al-Qaeda, of ISIS. ISIS is now hand in hand with Israel. I don't even want to name that country. I mean, they are Zionists. And we know that Iran also hit the Iraqi Kurdish areas, which were also being manned by the Mossad groups. So yes, it is escalating. Every single day it is escalating. And every hour actually we watch the news, we try to figure out what is happening on the ground, and we all should be doing that. This should not be left to some political elite to give us an analysis. This is our job. We, the people who are on the ground, we who are part of the masses, we should be watching and trying to understand, because we should not be driven into a religious frenzy, which they will try to raise. We should not be driven into fighting with our own neighbors, which also we have a history of. The people of our lands, whether it is Iran, it is Pakistan, it is the rest of the world, the people need to come together and try to understand that these mechanisms of trying to create these small groups of militants who are not militants, they are extremists, they are American agents. We should not fall into the trap of imperialism, but try to build a solidarity of people to people. I hope I was able to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Azra. So we have someone who raised his hand. I'd like to call Herman. If you have any question, please do try to open your mic and please raise your question or comments for that matter.
Thank you for the opportunity. What I want to say very briefly is that whether the countries, I think it's not only Sri Lanka, not only Pakistan, many of the countries are facing this similar type of difficulties. So is it possible that we initiate a kind of a campaign saying that most of these debts are illegitimate and this debt should be cancelled, and it will help at least to overcome the situations of the vulnerable communities, vulnerable people, and also prevent the destruction of resources, grabbing of resources, and overexploitation of our labor and resources and so on. So what I want to say here is to whether we can begin a kind of a campaign to cancel the debts which affect us badly. So that is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman. So anyone, Azra, Wali, Rodolfo, would you like to respond to that question or a point raised by Herman?
I think Rodolfo will answer, but I would also like to answer this. I think this has been a resounding call, not only at Marrakesh, but in many different regional fora or even global fora, and at the local level. It's not a debt. We have paid back the debt if we ever took it 100 times, more than 100 times. The debt was given by the elite of the imperialist countries, and the debt was taken by the elite of our semi-feudal, semi-colonial countries. It was not our debt. And so why should we pay back what we never got, what we never received? And we had to actually pay through the taxes that are imposed on our earnings, on our very meager earnings. So why should we do this? So totally, absolutely agree with you, Herman. We should have a very huge, there has been a very big movement on this issue of cancelling the debt, which I think Rodolfo talked about also in his intervention. But I think, yes, let us work towards it, and let's find ways of not paying the government what the taxes they levy on us. I think that should be, because we don't pay the loans back, it's our governments who pay the loans back through our incomes. So our response at the mass level should be, how do we create a mechanism that we don't pay what the government is asking us to pay back? and they should find whatever they have, the massive wealth themselves, the elite of this country, of all our countries, and they need to do something about it, get out of the country or do whatever they want. But we should not pay their debt.
Thank you, Azra. Before I go to Dr. Siva, would you like to respond to that point by Herman, Rodolfo? Would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, Azra very much said 90% of what I was going to say in a more eloquent and compelling way than I ever could have done. So I'd just like to add like two dimensions to that conversation. There's that demand of cancellation, right, which rests on the institutions who supposedly channeled the loan. Cancellation is addressed to those institutions for them to write off, forgive the debt. So it's addressed to the IMF. The World Bank is addressed to the bilateral lenders, etc. So that's cancellation. There's also that dimension of repudiation, right? We can talk about whether we as peoples, as people's organizations, social movements would like to call for repudiation, calling on our governments and our own peoples to say, like Azra said, we won't allow payments of the debt. So, there are two dimensions to that. Are you addressing the demand to those who lent the money supposedly, or are you addressing the demand from the debtor side, who experience the burdens and have been, like Azra said, have been actually been paying the loan for decades and decades. So cancellation, repudiation, it's one conversation that if ILPS will further engage that conversation and further amplify, develop a campaign on that, perhaps that's one aspect for action. Thanks.
Thank you, Rodolfo, for that intervention. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Siva for your question or comment. Please go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yep. So I'm Dr. Tangella Shivaprasad Reddy. I am a doctor into journalism. I'm from Hyderabad, southern part of India. So this entire webinar is being beamed live to the world through my channels, YouTube as well as Facebook, which I have done earlier with the same group. And for the information, all the Sri Lankan troubles were projected to the world by these channels, including Jayawardhane's, the ex-president's grandson, and the elected representatives all participated on this channel. That is how we could make it more public rather than just having an internal discussion. The similar way, the Pakistanis' cause also will be reflected in the mindsets of the world. And having said so, I have toured Pakistan, madam, in 2006. I have travelled along with Didi Nirmala Deshpande on an invite to address a seminar in Karachi. So I travelled out of that. After that, though they were insisting me to fly, I went by road from Karachi to Peshawar, northwest frontier of Pakistan, then came back to Lahore, went to Nankana Sahib. Then after that, I came out and I was reporting very widely. What surprised me most is the highways and adoring the highways, state highways, national highways, state highways, and everywhere you go, you have a small petrol pump for the gas or everything, and then you used to get dal chawal, very neatly modeled. I'm talking about Pakistan in 2006. So much of money was invested on the infrastructure, the roads. But when you come to the other side of the flip-flop, this show, common basic newspaper was so costly. People were not having any idea of information. Wherever I used to go, I visited many places, though that time Mr. Nawaz Sharif was there, and then Lucknow Raja was also hinting him that he should be allowed to go. They said, no, bomb blasts, everything happened. I said, if I am destined to die here, no one can stop me. But I have come here with a proper permission, diplomatically, and I am interacting, you can record. Wherever I went, whether it is Indian diaspora minorities or the majority Muslims, whether they are Shias or Sunnis, or for that matter, our Indians. I visited that Usmania hospital in Karachi, who used to be called as Mujahidins. So I visited, and my only take out of all these things is the rulers, whoever it may be, they were trying to see that people are enslaved eternally. They should not have a bit of proper information as to what is happening at the highest strata wherein the decisions are being made, whether it is policy or otherwise. So I say, infringement of fundamental rights. As soon as you are born on this earth, you acquire those beautiful rights as a human, and as a human being born in that particular country, you are the custodian of the natural resources. We say all resources, right from ground, water to air, underneath, minerals or whatever, they belong to every citizen. This is what I was trying to make it clear. Even in India, I am fighting a big battle. That is why my live shows on satellite channel stopped, thanks to COVID-19. When I was exposing COVID-19 in way back in February 2020, in that satellite channel, Midday Politics, Neha TV, they asked me, either you take lakhs and you dictate whatever they say, or else you quit. And then, being a son-in-law of Kerala, they packed me to Kerala from Hyderabad. That is where these channels, DRTSPR, Citizens-DRTSPR and Environment People DRTSPR channels took birth. Now this is being live on Citizens-DRTSPR channel. I thought, being a doctor, a journalist, when people are in disarray, and then why disarray? Because of this fear. Why fear? Fear because of not having proper knowledge about rights and resources. Elections are nothing but they are rights and resources. You elect them so that there is no infringement of your rights. In doing so, they should properly administer in a transparent and accountable way your resources. What is happening now? Davos, I was about to make a show. They say Hyderabad, they want to make a global city. Everyone is running to Davos. For what is World Economic Forum? We have exposed it 4 or 5 years back. How it is trying to dictate. Couple of people, couple of industrialists, can they grow bigger than a country? Country means people and resources. How can one or two boss over our rights and resources? That is nonsense. So that is how you should put it across. This is what we have done in Sri Lanka after the initial movement, when it was fading away, after they appointed another prime minister who was trying to deal with IMF and all. And then how China influenced and India came out, Adani, all this nonsense was happening. This political level confusions. We used to have SARC before. They have destroyed SARC. At least we used to have a dialogue between the Southern Asian group. Likewise, Southeast Asian group was also there. Philippines was major part. But unfortunately, those who are given away to G20 and new type of groups are coming up. These groups are funded by the so-called capitalists. India is a mixed economy. But now they are trying to change the equation into capitalist economy. See the electoral bonds. I'll give you one issue. How the government is scared. I complained about our Honorable Prime Minister's education qualifications in April. I was not yielding. They were doing so many things. Even this time, they tried to block your accounts, everything. I told my wife, whatever amount we have. Otherwise, nothing. So, they went to the parliament. They have amended Election Commission of India appointment bill, madam. They ran to parliament to amend Election Commission of India, which should be independent. Now, Prime Minister, Cabinet Minister and opposition leader are going to elect. So, when you have a majority there, it's clearly understood. So scary. And then electoral bonds. These bonds are funded by invisible corporates. Supreme Court, it is still lying. We are demanding Supreme Court to immediately come to the rescue of India. That means people, and elections means rights and resources. They will not provide you any information as to who is funding which party and which candidate. Can this be accepted? Where is democracy? How can you elect someone?
Yes, that's a very good question.
How can you just, I'm winding up 1 minute.
Yes.
How can you elect someone or a party without understanding who is funding them, from where they are getting this money? That means those who are indulging in corruption. So that is what I'm trying to say. Corruption is the scourge of the society. That corruption happens out of the selfish motives of few people. Now there they attribute caste, creed and religion. Everything can be taken over. And that's why now in India there's a big Hindu movement. I blame all those political parties who were vouching on minoritism voting patterns without developing them, at the same time neglecting the majority. This is what is happening, diverting
Thank you.
our attention
Yes.
from core issues. So that is why we say every citizen should understand about their rights and the resources. Resources belong to
Yes,
every citizen,
yes.
and we are not slaves. That has to be understood. We are a
Yeah.
people participatory
Yes, very
constitutional
correct.
democracy anywhere in the world. So my channels are
Yeah.
there. I am ready.
Thank you. Yes,
to
thank
beam
you,
it
Dr.
live,
Siva.
and we will make it public. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for a very important intervention. Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to go on to another question that has been forwarded to me. So, okay, so this is one question for probably again for Wali and Azra. We saw that the Pakistani people, especially the working people, were going out, full out, to support Palestine. Um, is this kind of a situation leading to building other alliances between different groups inside Pakistan? Is it possible to have this kind of alliances now because of this, strong campaign to support Palestine? Azra, Wali,
Yeah,
your
that's an
thoughts?
excellent question, Noel. Thanks a lot for the question. And I think, on one hand, where we have seen 100 days of genocide, such brutal pictures coming out of Gaza, it's very hard to. I mean, I keep saying to everybody, please don't say it is hard to watch because they're living through it. And if they're living through it, we at least have that responsibility to see what is happening. In any case, I think for Gaza, the solidarity for Palestinians is immense. And I think not only in the country, where also we see a lot of alliances happening um, amongst groups that would not come together before. And they are coming together. People are going to each other's मुजाहिरे को क्या कहते हैं? Demonstrations. They are going to each other's demonstrations. They are trying to live with each other when they could not because of political differences or religious or ethnic differences. Those differences are being at the moment put aside to come together in the name of humanity, in the name of the people who are suffering such a huge massacre and 100 days of starvation is impossible to imagine. So I think it.
Oh, we have. I think Azra is experiencing some technical difficulties right now. So we'll go back to her later, no? Once her connection is a bit more stable. On the other hand, I'd like to call on. We have here Zahur. If you'd like to give your short intervention on the matter, I'd like to call on Zahur.
Yes,
Please go ahead.
thank you very much. I have just only one comment. In my opinion, earlier our friends said about human rights. In my opinion, these human rights and similar things are only for the capitalist and imperialist countries, and that too only for themselves. But if we talk about Pakistan, Sri Lanka, or countries like them, there is nothing like what we seen and are will still seeing in Palestine. I think we should strive to change this so-called democratic and capitalist system. I think this is the way of we will struggle for the actual human rights, and we are fighting for farmers community like landless and small farmers. Thank you. This is my thank you so much.
Thank you, Zohar. Thank you for that. Indeed, we need to fight for these rights. Very good point mentioned there by Zahur. And uh, Azra, are you okay now? Connection is okay? Would you
Yeah.
like to continue your intervention? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was almost at the end. I just wanted to say yes, we are seeing alliances inside the country, but I'm also seeing alliances across our countries and across the regions. So I think that is something which is a positive development out of the massacre that we are seeing.
Yes, Azra?
So I'm done speaking. Did you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for that intervention. Indeed, we are now near the end of our webinar. In the meantime, we will be hearing one of our speakers, and he will be speaking in Urdu. So I would like to request everyone to choose the English channel. So those who cannot speak Urdu, please go to the your interpretation channel and choose the English channel and see then there you can hear the interpretation. So now I'd like to call on for our closing remarks. He is a peasant leader and one of the steering committee members of Pakistan Kisan Mazdoor Tehreek, or PKMT, a small and landless farmers mass movement. He has worked for many years to sensitize, mobilize, and organize rural communities for fighting for right to land, right to food, right to all productive recourse. His direct work on the ground with peasants and workers has given him an in-depth understanding of the social, economic, and political actors and factors responsible for the oppression and exploitation of the masses inside Pakistan. He plays an instrumental role in PKMT, not just with his critical analytical skills, but also engaging with the communities on a daily basis. So really proud to call on Asif Khan. Asif, please take the floor.
बहुत शुक्रिया नोएल। मैं अपनी वीडियो नहीं शेयर कर सकता क्योंकि सिग्नल का इशू है, फिर सिग्नल चला जाएगा। मैं अपनी बात शुरू करूंगा। हमारे जो चौथे स्पीकर है उन्होंने जो बात की उनकी मैं शुरू की बात नहीं सुन सका। उन्होंने जो बातें की हैं मेरे दिल पे लगी हैं, बाकी दोस्तों की भी बातें दिल पे लगी हैं। इन्होंने बोला कि IMF को 60 साल हो गए और ये कर्जे का एक शिकंजा है और ये हमारे मुल्कों के लिए एक शिकंजा है IMF। और हम जैसे जो मुल्क बुरान में होते हैं उनको मजीद बुरान में धकेल दिया जा रहा है। और ये क्लियर बात है कि ये IMF रोकता है, शराइत लगाता है कि अवाम पे खर्च ना करो, बल्कि जो है वो एलीट क्लास पे खर्च करो। और बेल आउट पैकेज भी पैसे वाले मुल्कों को और पैसे वाले लोगों को दिए जाते हैं। IMF सरमायादारी को बढ़ाता है और भूख गुर्बत और यूटिलिटी बिलों को बढ़ाता है। और आखिरी उन्होंने जो बड़ी बात बोली कि IMF को रोक दें और मुस्तकबिल को आजाद करें। हरमन भाई ने जो बात की सेम पाकिस्तान की तरह है कि IMF कि हमको भी आज़ाद तजारत के शिकंजे में डाल दिया गया IMF की वजह से। हमारी बंदरगाहें और सरकारी इदारे जो हैं वो IMF के कब्जे में चले गए, कीमतें बढ़ गई, हुकूमतों को इस्तेकाम नहीं दिया जा रहा और ख़तरनाक कानून बनाए जा रहे हैं उन लोगों के लिए जो मज़ामत के लिए आते हैं, उनके लिए लंबे अरसे तक एक बहुत सख्त खतरनाक कानून बनाएंगे। डॉक्टर अजरा ने बोला कि IMF जो है एक इस्तेसाली अदारा है और ये माशी असरात के अलावा सियासी असरात हमारे मुल्कों को ज़्यादा हैं। और IMF जो है ये कर्जे देकर हमारी हुकूमतों को 1 मिनट में ख़त्म करता है और 1 मिनट में उनको जो है वो हुकूमत बना देता है। और ऐसी मज़ामत करने वाले ग्रोहों के खिलाफ 1 मिनट में 10 कानून पास किए जा रहे हैं। और IMF जो है हकीकी जमहूरियत को रोकने का एक बड़ा आला है। वली अहद ने बहुत सी बातें की हैं, लेकिन उनकी बातें जो हैं ये सारे जो हमारे आज का वेबिनार है इसका जो निचोड़ है, वली अहद ने वो अपनी बात में पेश किया है कि हमारे पैदावार में और तजारत में बड़ा फर्क है। हमारे पैदावार और तजारत में बड़ा फर्क है। हमारी आमदन कम है और खर्चे ज़्यादा हैं। और हमारे जो टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर था जिससे हम बरामदात कमा रहे थे, उसको भी जो है IMF ने बिल्कुल दीवार के साथ लगा दिया। अब बात यह है, मैं अपनी बात यहाँ से करूँगा कि हमारे जैसे मुल्कों में पैदावार क्यों नहीं हो रही, हम क्यों नहीं पैदावार करके अपनी एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ा रहे। तो हमारा खिता नौबदियात का शिकार रहा है और नौबदियात के बाद जब नाम नयाद आज़ादी हुई या ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर हुआ, कॉलोनियल नौबदियात के बाद नौबदियात से निकला हुआ एक तबका हमारे ऊपर हुक्मरान हो गया। यहाँ से फिर पाकिस्तान में एक नए माशी निज़ाम का, इस्तिसाली निज़ाम का आगाज हुआ। अब पाकिस्तान मौजूदा सेमी कॉलोनियल और सेमी फ्यूडल सिस्टम में है। पाकिस्तान में 5% खानदानों के पास 64% ज़री ज़मीन है। सदर इनकलाब ने इन खानदानों को, इन जागीरदारों को, इन 5% खानदानों को बेताशा उनकी दौलत में इजाफा किया। मगर हमारे किसान के पास ना तो आज बीज हैं और ना बीज है, ना उनके पास खाद है। अब मल्टीनेशनल कंपनियों के महंगे तरीन बीज और केमियाई खादें खरीदने पर हम मजबूर हैं और इस वजह से आज हमारा किसान खेती बाड़ी से दूर हो चुका है। फिर वर्ल्ड बैंक और IMF का हमारे स्पीकर ने इतना ज़्यादा उनके इस्तेसाल का जिक्र किया, तो इस वजह से पाकिस्तान में जो एलीट क्लास है, जो कपड़ा डोर तबका है, IMF ने कर्ज दे देकर इसकी दौलत में इतना इजाफा किया। दूसरी तरफ मजदूर किसान इस कर्जा के बोझ तले दबकर दूसरी तरफ मजदूर किसान तबका इस कर्जा के बोझ तले दबकर सियासी, माशी और माशरती तरक्की के अमल से बहुत दूर हो चुका है। अब सवाल ये है कि हम पैदावार क्यों नहीं करते, हमारे यहाँ सनत क्यों नहीं है? पहली वजह तो ये है कि हमारे जैसे मुल्कों में हकीकी जमहूरियत है ही नहीं। यहाँ सेमी कॉलोनियल और सेमी फ्यूडल निज़ाम है। हमारे जो हुक्मरान हैं ये साम्राज्य के मुंशी हैं, उनके दलाल हैं, ये कंप्राडोर हैं। और ये जो दलाल हैं, ये मुंशी हैं, ये साम्राज्य की मदद से हमारे मुल्कों में कारखाने नहीं लगने देते। और जो थोड़े बहुत कारखाने हैं वो भी IMF और वर्ल्ड बैंक की शराइत की वजह से बंद हो रहे हैं। मगर फौज के कारखाने और अदारे बड़ी तेजी से तरक्की कर रहे हैं, ये एक बड़ा सवाल है। तो इस सूरत-हाल की वजह से पाकिस्तान में इस वक्त 9.5% लोग बेरोजगार हैं। ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स की रिपोर्ट के मुताबिक पाकिस्तान जो भूख के शदीद तरीन मुल्कों में 125 मुल्कों में से 102 नंबर पर है। और 56% हमारी आवाम अनपढ़ है। 56। तो इन सारी वजूहात की बिना पर अब मेहनतकश तबका अपने अज़ली दुश्मन साम्राज्य, जागीरदार, सरमायादार से मनज़्ज़म निज़ामत और लड़ने के अमल से दूर होकर भूख से मरने से बचने के लिए तगदो कर रहा है। सेमी फ्यूडल और सेमी कॉलोनियल रियासत का बड़ा हरबा फाशिज्म है। साम्राज्यी माशी निजाम के तहत जो रियासत होती है वो फाशिज्म के बगैर फल फूल नहीं सकती। फाशिज्म पाकिस्तान पूरी तरह फाशिज्म में फंस चुका है और इसकी मिसाल सूबा बलूचिस्तान के मेहनतकश अपनी धरती पर हक जताने और मुकामी वसाइल पर मामूली हिस्सा मांगने की जुर्म में संगीन गद्दारी की जुर्म में फंस चुके हैं। जी डॉक्टर। तो पाकिस्तान किसान मजदूर तहरीक की तरफ से कुछ चंद हमारी डिमांड है। हमको मौसमी इंसाफ चाहिए। G7 और सरमायादार ममालिक हम जैसे ममालिक के नुकसान को पूरा करें। IMF और वर्ल्ड बैंक के कर्जों को माफ किया जाए। साम्राज्य हमारे मुल्कों को माशी और सियासी पॉलिसियों साम्राज्य हमारे मुल्कों की सियासी और माशी पॉलिसियों में दखल अंदाजी न करे। ज़रूरी पॉलिसियाँ किसानों की शिरकत और शराकत से बनाई जाएं, माशी मसाइल पर मुकामी लोगों का प्यार हो। WTO और IMF के मुआहदों को फिलफौर खत्म किया जाए, आज़ाद मंडी का खात्मा किया जाए, जमीनों का मुनसिफाना और मुसलमाना बंटवारा किया जाए, मुकामी सनत और आवामी जरूरत की सनत को साम्राज्यी ममालिक लगने से न रोके। पाकिस्तान के सियासी मसाइल की वजह माशी पॉलिसियां हैं। इस मुल्क के वसाइल पर 2% तबके वसाइल और फैसला साजी पर 2% तबके का अख्तियार है। अब इसको उल्ट करना पड़ेगा। ये सारे वसाइल मेहनतकश तबका के पास होने चाहिए। IMF और वर्ल्ड बैंक जैसे इस्तिसाली इदारों का खात्मा किया जाए। पाकिस्तान में बड़े पैमाने पर सियासी इस्लाहात होनी चाहिए। दफाई और गैर जरूरी अखराजात को खत्म करके हंगामी बुनियादों पर तालीम और सेहत पर पैसा खर्च किया जाए। पाकिस्तान की रियासत को फाशिज्म से पाक किया जाए। हम पड़ोसी ममालिक से अच्छे तल्लुकात चाहते हैं, हम जंग नहीं चाहते। अक़लियत और अक्सरियत के दरमियान फर्क को रियासत की सतह पर खत्म करना चाहिए। रियासती इदारे अशराफिया की खिदमत के बजाय अवाम के खादम बने। कॉर्पोरेट ज़राअत का खात्मा, और रवायती ज़राअत का फ़रोग़। हकीकी जमहूरियत किसान तरीकों को बनने से ना रोका जाए। हकीकी जमहूरी किसान तरीकों को बनने से ना रोका जाए। Thank you very much.
సార్ నేను ఇంట్లోనే ఉన్నా సార్, అది లైవ్ వస్తుండే.
Thank you, Shukriya, Asif.
సిస్టమ్ అంటే
So, for everyone, please move to the
శ్రీలంకది పెట్టినాం కదా సిరీస్, పాకిస్తాన్
original audio.
లోన్ ఇచ్చి ఎట్లా కబ్జా చేసుకుంటాం
So,
మొత్తాన్ని.
thank you again, Shukriya, Asif, for that very important closing remark. And on behalf of the International League of People's Struggles, I'd like to thank all of you, all of the participants here today, the organizations and the movements for taking your time to be in this very special webinar. We would also like to thank our interpreters, who also happen to be our main speakers. So Azra and Wali, thank you again. Shukriya, Azra, Wali. And of course, we'd like to thank our tech team, our reactors, Rodolfo and Herman. Thank you for coming. It has been a very interesting and the points that were shared by our speakers about Pakistan, about Sri Lanka, and also about how IMF is exploiting, putting all the countries in the global south, and that's not only about Pakistan, Sri Lanka, or South Asia or Southeast Asia. It includes Latin America and Africa. All of these countries in the global south are now under this debt trap propagated by IMF and the World Bank. So, again, thank you very much for everyone, and we need to do something for Pakistan. We need to stand for Pakistan. We need to fight for land rights of farmers. And of course, we as working people of the world, part of the global south, we need to fight to end imperialist control of our economies, of our countries. So we would like also to call everyone and join us in our climate justice campaign for Pakistan, as well as our climate justice campaign for the rest of the world. Again, long live international solidarity. Thank you very much. Shukriya. So before we end our meeting, I would like to request everyone to open your cameras, video, and let's have a group photo. So tech team, are you ready? And if you have any like posters like what I have here, I don't know if you can read it, no? But I'm sad. It's the what's written there is "Stand with Pakistan." You can raise that, and then we'll have our photo to take it. Tech team ready? Okay. So please stand for Pakistan. Land rights for farmers.
Yes.
And imperialist control. Climate justice for Pakistan.
Yes.
Climate justice for the rest of the world. Long live international solidarity.
Do share the photograph.
Thank you, tech team. Hopefully you were able to capture that. Thank you, Dr. Siva. Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Rodolfo. Thank you for everyone who joined us in this very important webinar. In this